Guten Tag, der Klett-Cotta-Blog ist wieder in Stuttgart. Neben mir sitzt David Whitehouse. Hello, David.
Hello, hello.
You have published a book translated by Dorothy Merkel, der Blumensammler. And after the mobile library, now I show the picture of your book, Mobile Library, has published your third novel, The Long Forgotten, with a new title, Der Blumensammler. Do you like the German title?
I do. It took me a long time to name the book. I think it's had about 15 different titles in English.
Really?
None of them were correct. The Long Forgotten was the closest I got. So it's always nicer for me in a way when somebody else names it, because they've read it and they take what they want from it and they find meaning in it. I think it's almost better if it's named by a reader, and which is what's happened here. So the Flower Collector makes perfect sense to me.
Yes, but The Long Forgotten deals with the main subject of your book, the past.
Yeah.
And Blumensammler, that gives a little bit another signification for your book.
There are the two themes of the book really, which are linked, are memory and the loss of memory and living vicariously through others, and also the search for 6 different and very rare flowers, which for me are all embody different facets of the human mind, like its fragility, the nature of its death and rotting, all of these things that happen to the human mind. So the two things the flowers and memory in the book are very close.
The description of your book is dealing with the historical aspects, and you read the sentence.
Yeah. When the black box flight recorder of a plane that went missing 30 years ago is found at the bottom of the sea, a young man named Dove begins to remember a past that isn't his.
Is there any relation between Professor Cole and Dove, who works in a call center?
There is, yeah. So Professor Cole is the person who finds the black box in the belly of a whale at the bottom of the ocean.
We introduce the main characters in this novel.
Yeah, and that's in the present day. And when he opens the black box, a man named Dove, who is in his 30s in London, present day London, begins to experience these intense headaches, migraines. And when he has these headaches, he starts to have memories that don't belong to him. And the book really becomes about him trying to figure out who these memories belong to and what they are and what that means for him and his identity.
There's a third tale in your... There's wind?
Wind, yeah.
Once more. There's a third tale in your novel, the story of Peter Manyweathers, who discovers a strange flower.
Yeah.
He looks for information about this flower in a library, and he finds other rare flowers.
That's right. So the memories that Dove experiences are memories of a man named Peter Manyweathers, who is a crime scene cleaner in 1980s New York, who, as you say, on one of these crime scenes finds a very rare flower, a very beautiful flower called the bog violet, and he goes to research at Brooklyn Library and finds this love letter written by somebody else, which details the 6 rarest and most interesting flowers in the world, and he makes it his mission to go and find each of them.
That's a program for his journey, the 6 flowers.
Pardon?
That's a program for his journey.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, it's very much the structure of the book is his. He has to find each of those 6 flowers, and each one he finds, he learns something a little more about himself.
The description of your book puts forward The Long Forgotten is a sensational novel about love, loss, inheritance, and obsession. In fact, the reconstruction of the past by coincidences is the main theme of your novel.
It is. I'm interested in how we remember the past and how we don't remember it, and the fact that we often recall the past through the memories of others and stories that we are told, so that ultimately our memories of our own lives are not always entirely ours. And that's each of the characters in the book is really looking for some kind of completion about their past, to get the full picture of their own past, their own history, before they can move forward.
In which sense the past is necessary for our actual life?
Yeah, you do. You do, but at the same time, it can be, your memories of the past can be deceiving, or they can, they're as reported by other people, or they're as imagined through the prisms of grief and experience and love. I'm interested in how kind of memories are formed. They're not always accurate recordings of events that have happened to a person.
What would you say to students why they have to learn something about history?
Why they have to learn something about history? I think, well, firstly, history is so much more romantic than the present. History is a complete picture. We can take understandings from it, whereas it's very difficult to form your understandings about the future from what is happening now. You need to look backwards.
I wrote on our blog about your novel. At a certain point, the three tales blur or merge into one another, which create, by the way, a sort of precise tract about the force of memory.
That was the intention. Yes. All of the characters are bound by a similar search through their own pasts and they're all kind of held back in a way by a lack of understanding about their histories, which the tale of the novel is the search for them to find these things. So they become inextricably linked then.
You had first the idea to write something about the past, about history, and then you looked for your characters, or did you first think about your characters and then you developed the main theme of the memory?
I think I had I think the characters came first. Yeah. I always wanted to write a 30-year-old in present-day London who's living a very kind of flat and unimportant existence because he doesn't know anything about his own past, which is the character Dove in the book. I always wanted to write a kind of ripping yarn, an adventure story, which is what happens to Peter Manyweathers, who searches for these 6 flowers. And I always wanted to write a book about memory. So they come at the same time, but first you need to build the characters to hold the structure. Yeah.
You were sometimes astonished about the development of your characters?
Yeah, as always happens, I think once you have the characters, the story disappears in routes and ways you didn't really expect. So I certainly didn't. There are parts of the story I didn't know until they became apparent, and there are new characters that were born halfway through, and new themes that you explore. So it takes you on a long, hard journey itself. Yeah.
Dove has another problem with the past. He evokes the duality of the past. Is this right? The duality of past.
Dove.
Die Mehrdeutigkeit.
His problem with the past really is that he doesn't have one, and he's trying to discover one. I suppose. So he's a foundling, which means he was abandoned as a baby. He has foster parents, but what that means is he doesn't know who his parents are, and because of that he doesn't truly understand why he is like he is. And I think he's wondering how much of the reasons for the way he is are down to genetics, how much of it is down to experience. He doesn't understand what goes into his personal makeup, his own history.
This is the significance of the flowers in your book. There's much more behind, because they're not only 6 flowers. No,
they're not only 6 flowers. For me, they became a lot of research, and they're the 6 strangest and most interesting flowers for me in the world, and each of them come to represent different aspects of the human mind. Its fragility, its, as I said before, its limitedness, the fact that it will die eventually, its occasional ugliness, our inability to understand it, our need to believe in something. All of these are represented by the flowers in the book that Peter Manyweathers sets out to find.
Curiosity, persistence matched with a thirst of adventure pushed in your novel. What is the role of the very strange coincidences?
I hope that the coincidences. I mean, I think if a story begins with coincidence, that's
a bit strange, isn't it, sir?
I think that's absolutely fine, as long as they don't end with coincidence.
It's not a real story.
What, a story that begins with coincidence? Yes. Coincidence can happens to people every day. Lots of stories begin with coincidence. Yeah. I remember I was in Mumbai in India, and I saw I'd never been to India before, and I saw at the other end of a market a man I used to work with 15 years ago, and had never in the middle of India, and we spent an amazing 5 days together hanging out. So coincidence can be the start of any story, I think. Yeah, and in my story, there are coincidences, but I hope that they come together in the end.
But this really, the flight recorder is very invented, isn't it so?
Finding the flight recorder in the belly of a whale is my nod to kind of older, the kind of adventure stories I used to read as a child. It is coincidental, but it has to happen somehow.
Your novel is not a detective novel. No. Also, one who reads your book in the train will miss the station where he has to go out.
I hope so.
What is your stylistic device you use to create the suspense?
It's to approach. I wanted to approach it like a detective novel, like a mystery novel, so that the character of Dove is a detective, really, and he's a detective in his own memories. So he's trying to find out who he is from these things that he suddenly remembers. So you're right, it is a detective novel, but Dove is the detective, and there hasn't been a crime.
Who should read your book and where?
Everyone, everywhere would be nice.
Thank you very much.
No problem, thank you.